Once there was a very rich trader. He had 6 kids, 3 sons, and 3 daughters. He was smart and made sure his children got a good education. His daughters were very pretty, especially the youngest one. People admired her when she was little, and they called her Little Beauty. As she grew up, they still called her Beauty, and this made her sisters very jealous. Beauty was not just pretty, she was also kind. The 2 older sisters were proud because they were wealthy. They acted stuck up and didn't want to hang out with other merchants' daughters or anyone who wasn't rich. Every day, they went to parties, balls, shows, concerts, and such. They made fun of their youngest sister, Beauty, because she spent a lot of time reading good books. It was known that they would inherit a lot of money, and many important merchants wanted to marry them. But the 2 older sisters said they would only marry a duke or an earl. Beauty was polite to those who wanted to marry her and said she was too young to wed, choosing to stay with her father for a few more years. Suddenly, the trader lost all his money, except for a small house far away from the city. He told his children, with tears in his eyes, that they had to go there and work to support themselves. The 2 older sisters refused to leave the town because they had lovers who, they thought, would still want them even without money. However, their lovers abandoned them when they became poor. People said they deserved this because of their pride. Let them go work on the farm and take care of cows. They felt sorry for Beauty, who was kind and friendly to everyone. Many gentlemen would have married her even though she had no money, but she didn't want to leave her poor father. She decided to go with him to the country to take care of him. At first, Beauty was sad about losing her wealth, but she thought, crying won't make things better. I need to find happiness without money. In the country, the trader and his 3 sons worked in the fields. Beauty woke up at 4 in the morning, cleaned the house, and prepared breakfast for the family. It was tough for her at first because she wasn't used to doing housework, but after 2 months, she became stronger and healthier than ever. After finishing her chores, she read, played music, or sang while she spun yarn. In contrast, her 2 sisters didn't know how to spend their time. They woke up at 10 and just wandered around, missing their fancy clothes and friends. They said to each other, "Look at our youngest sister. She's so dull and content in this sad situation." The kind trader, however, thought differently. He knew that Beauty was more beautiful and kind-hearted than her sisters. He admired her hard work, patience, and humility even though her sisters made fun of her and left all the work to her. The family lived in the countryside for about a year when the merchant got a letter saying his ship had safely arrived with his belongings. His 2 older daughters eagerly wanted to return to town, and they asked for fancy things. Beauty, though, only wished for a rose since there were none around. The merchant set out but had legal trouble with his goods, making him poor again. As he was nearing home, he got lost in a forest during a bad storm. The wind was fierce, and it started to snow. Night fell, and he worried about freezing or being eaten by wolves. Suddenly, he saw a palace with lights on. He was relieved and went towards it. The courtyards were empty, and his horse found shelter in a stable. The merchant, wet and cold, found a warm, well-set table in a hall for one person. He sat by the fire, hoping someone from the palace would arrive soon. He waited until it was almost 11, but no one came. Feeling hungry, he ate a chicken quickly and had some wine. Feeling bolder, he explored the palace. In one room, he found a good bed. It was past midnight, so he decided to sleep there. He woke up at 10 the next morning and saw new clothes in place of his old ones. This palace must belong to a kind fairy, he thought. Looking out the window, he saw a beautiful garden. In the hall where he had dinner, he found chocolate ready. He thanked the fairy and drank it. Then he went to find his horse. While walking through a rose-covered area, he remembered Beauty's request for a rose and picked one. Suddenly, a terrifying beast appeared and accused him of stealing. The beast, whose name was Beast, gave the merchant 15 minutes to prepare and say his prayers. The merchant begged for forgiveness and agreed to return in 3 months. He filled a chest with his favorite things, thinking of his children. He returned to the bedroom, where he found lots of gold pieces. He filled the chest as Beast had told him, locked it, and took his horse from the stable. He left the palace with a heavy heart, and the horse led him through the forest. In a few hours, he was back home. His children gathered around him, but instead of being happy, he held up the branch of roses and cried. He told them about his adventure. The 2 older sisters complained and blamed Beauty for their father's predicament, but Beauty didn't cry. She said, "I'll go to the beast to save our father." Her brothers wanted to go and fight the beast, but the merchant knew it was too dangerous. He admired Beauty's brave offer but didn't want to accept it. He was old and didn't have many years left. "I can't let you do it," he said. "I regret this for your sakes only." Beauty insisted on going with her father, and her sisters were secretly happy about it because they were jealous of her good qualities. The merchant forgot about the chest full of gold. But that night, when he was alone in his room, he found the chest beside his bed. He decided not to tell his children about it because he didn't want them to go back to town, but he confided in Beauty. She told him that 2 gentlemen had come and proposed to her sisters, and she asked him to consent to their marriage and give them some of the gold. Beauty was so kind that she forgave her sisters for their unkindness. They pretended to cry when they parted, but Beauty was the only one who didn't because she didn't want to make things worse. After that, Beauty and her father headed towards the palace where the beast lived. The horse led them back to the palace, which was brilliantly lit as before. They entered the stable, and the merchant and Beauty found a splendidly set table for 2 in the grand hall. Beauty tried to remain cheerful, thinking, "Beast is trying to fatten me up before eating me." After dinner, they heard a noise, and the merchant, in tears, bade farewell, thinking Beast was coming. Beauty trembled but said she had come willingly. Beast thanked her and told her father to leave the next morning. Beauty and her father said their farewells. Once her father left, Beauty sat in the hall, crying, but she resolved to be brave. She explored the castle and found a room with a library, a harpsichord, and music books. She also discovered a book with a welcoming message promising swift obedience to her wishes. Beauty saw her home in a magic mirror and her father's arrival, along with her sister's joy at her absence. This glimpse left her anxious about Beast's intentions. At noon, she had lunch and enjoyed unseen music. At dinner, Beast asked to watch her eat, and she agreed, though she found him ugly but kind-hearted. Beauty felt pity for Beast, and they had supper. He asked her to be his wife, but she hesitated before saying no. This made Beast sigh and hiss, but he eventually left the room. Alone, Beauty thought it was a shame that someone so kind was so ugly. Beauty spent 3 happy months in the palace. Every evening, Beast visited her during supper, talking sensibly but not humorously. Beauty grew accustomed to his deformity and even looked forward to his visits, as he came every evening at 9. The only thing that bothered her was his nightly marriage proposal. One day, she told Beast that she couldn't marry him, but she valued their friendship. Beast accepted her answer, expressing his love for her and his happiness that she would stay. However, she wished to visit her father, who she had seen in her mirror, pining for her. Beast agreed to let her go for a week and promised to send her to her father. The next morning, Beauty found herself at her father's house. She rang a bell, and the maid was shocked to see her. Her father was overjoyed to see her and held her for a long time. Beauty worried about not having any clothes, but the maid found a trunk filled with beautiful gowns. Beauty intended to give some to her sisters, and as she mentioned this, the trunk vanished. Her father explained that Beast wanted her to keep them, and the trunk reappeared. Beauty dressed herself and her sisters, along with their husbands, were summoned. However, her sisters were unhappy in their marriages. The elder's husband was extremely handsome but narcissistic, and the younger's husband, though witty, used his wit to torment others, especially his wife. The sisters couldn't hide their envy when they saw Beauty looking like a princess, even more beautiful than before. They went to the garden to cry, and out of jealousy, they decided to try to keep Beauty beyond a week, hoping to enrage Beast into devouring her. To achieve this, they showed Beauty great kindness, making her so happy that she promised to stay another week. During her time at her father's, Beauty couldn't help but think about the misery she might be causing poor Beast, whom she loved. On the 10th night, she had a dream where she saw Beast lying in the palace garden, dying and reproaching her for her ingratitude. Beauty woke in tears, realizing that her decision had been unkind. She recognized Beast's kindness and good heart, his virtues that mattered more than his appearance and intelligence. She decided to return to him. That night, she left her ring on the table and fell asleep. The next morning, she woke in the Beast's palace, feeling overjoyed. She dressed in her finest attire to please him and eagerly awaited his evening visit. However, as the clock struck 9, Beast didn't appear. Beauty thought Beast had died, and she was very sad. She looked everywhere but couldn't find him. She remembered her dream and rushed to the garden's canal, where she found Beast lying there. She poured water on him, and he woke up. Beast told Beauty that he was ready to starve himself because he thought she had abandoned him. But when he saw her again, he was happy. Beauty realized she loved him and promised to marry him. Suddenly, the palace lit up with lights, fireworks, and music. Beauty was worried about Beast, but he had turned into a handsome prince. He explained that a wicked fairy had cursed him to be a beast until a kind maiden agreed to marry him. Beauty was the only one to do so, and he thanked her. They returned to the castle, where Beauty found her family. A fairy, who had appeared in Beauty's dream, spoke to them. Beauty's sisters, who were envious and cruel, were turned into statues and forced to watch Beauty's happiness. The fairy warned them that they could only return to their true selves when they admitted their faults. Beauty and the prince lived happily ever after.